Let's turn now to Beijing's controversial one-child policy. We'll hear from רג'י Littlejohn, president of Women's Rights Without Frontiers. She sheds light on the stories of those who'd lived through the policy firsthand. And just a warning, some viewers may find the following disturbing.
400 million baby boys and girls. That's more than the entire U.S. population. But these babies never saw the light of day. They were aborted under the Chinese Communist regime's one-child policy, some killed right after birth. The policy was introduced in 1980 and was active for decades after.
This was in the mid-90s that the one-child policy was not voluntary, which is what the propaganda department was putting out, but was actually very brutally and coercively enforced.
רג'י Littlejohn is the founder and president of an international coalition called Women's Rights Without Frontiers. The organization strives to expose and oppose forced abortion, gendercide, and sexual slavery in China. רג'י Littlejohn is an attorney. After graduating from Yale, she began representing refugees who were seeking asylum in the U.S. She says one case really stood out to her.
One of them was forcibly sterilized, so meaning that she was picked up and dragged out of her home, screaming and crying, held onto a bed, and sterilized without anesthesia. So she said that this was unbelievably painful, like somebody holding a fire hose inside of her.
The woman ended up with permanent migraines, back pain, and abdominal pain, conditions she'll endure for the rest of her life. She's one of countless women that suffered the same fate. Through her YouTube channel, Littlejohn describes another case she witnessed.
One case that I'll never forget is of a young woman who was 7 months pregnant without a birth permit. So that would be an illegal pregnancy, who was walking down the street, and she was grabbed by family planning cadres, dragged off the street, strapped down to a table, forced to abort the baby that she very desperately wanted.
And after the tragic procedure was over,
one of the medical personnel came to her with the body of her aborted baby and said, "You need to pay for this so that we can dispose of the body." And she said she didn't have any money, so they just laid that body right next to her in the bed. And I've got a photograph of her looking down and just grieving the loss of this 7-month-old baby that was forcibly aborted.
China has put limits on family size since the Chinese Communist Party took the power in 1949, long before the one-child policy took effect. And even though the controversial policy ended in 2016, the consequences are still felt today. For one, it's led to major imbalance in the population. China has a far greater number of males than females. That problem is rooted in another issue, gendercide. That's when families prefer baby boys over baby girls, largely because sons will take on the responsibility of caring for their parents later in life, while daughters will instead marry and join other families. The one-child policy compounded that situation, especially in rural areas. There, some families will abort baby girls, multiple times in some cases, until they get a boy. But Women's Rights Without Frontiers is working to fight that, with a project called the Save a Girl campaign. It's already saved over 100 baby girls in China. Littlejohn shared a story about how her team managed to save 2 twin daughters. She explains that the pregnant mother avoided getting an ultrasound until she was very far along because she knew her mother-in-law would force her to abort the baby if it was a girl. When she finally did get the ultrasound, she found out she was carrying not 1, but 2 baby girls.
Fortunately, one of our field workers found out about her, came to her door, said, "Congratulations on your twin daughters. Girls are as good as boys, and we will give you 2 monthly stipends for a year to empower you to keep your daughters." So with that encouragement and with the money, this $50 a month, she was able to go back to her husband and her mother-in-law and say, "Look, I can't abort. I can't abandon these baby girls. They're lucky girls. Look, they're already bringing money into the family, and the girls were born, and now, of course, everybody's in love with them.
The twins are among the lucky few. While it's difficult to get firm data on the subject, academics say there are now between 30 to 60 million missing girls in China, all of them either aborted or killed right after birth. But the gender imbalance has triggered another severe problem: human trafficking.
So there are about 30 to 40 million men without wives, and this is the engine that is driving human trafficking and sexual slavery throughout China and also from the surrounding countries. And it's impossible to get a number for that because all of this is done with the greatest secrecy.
Part of the issue is the way the legal system is set up. Under Chinese law, buying a trafficked woman will land you in jail for a maximum of 3 years. Buying a panda, on the other hand, leads to a far steeper sentence: 10 years behind bars. A related case sparked outrage on Chinese social media earlier this year, when a mother of 8 was found chained to a wall. Video surfaced of the woman locked in a shabby shed in a village in northwestern China, where she had been held for decades. She's suspected to be an example of bride trafficking, another result of the one-child policy. The chained woman's case caught huge attention in China and abroad, but even the strong wave of public opinion couldn't change her fate. Shortly after she was transferred to a local mental hospital, her whereabouts became a mystery to the public. But it's not just the unborn and young facing the after effects of the one-child policy.
And we're also saving abandoned widows that I call sort of the unsung or secret victims of the one-child policy. And people don't think about how the one-child policy is affecting widows, but traditionally they were supported by a large family, and they don't have a family to support them. So they are they are impoverished, they are abandoned, and a lot of them are committing suicide.
While the consequences of the one-child policy continue to take their toll, reports say one player actually benefited: the Chinese regime. According to a BBC News report, as of October 2015, the communist regime had collected over $300 billion in extra child fines. The penalties made up some of the punishments inflicted on parents who had more than one child. But despite the policy's continued impacts, there is hope. Littlejohn says the Women's Rights Without Frontiers Coalition is making a major impact.
We're the only organization in the world that actually has boots on the ground inside of China that is actively helping save baby girls from sex selective abortion, abandonment, and even just grinding poverty, which is endemic in the Chinese countryside, especially given the coronavirus lockdowns.
And those efforts aren't slowing down.